Call of Duty Zombies franchise has what some would say a cult following, and if you are part of the community, then you are most certainly aware of that. But what you may not be aware of if you're more of a casual fan are some of the exploits, glitches, or tricks that players have invented over time to get around certain systems created by the developers. Hi guys, my name is Skeptics, and in today's video, we are going over the top 10 best COD Zombies exploits discovered by players. Really gotta work on my titles, that one was not great. Coming in at number 10, we have the starting room parkour jump on Firebase Z. This is one of the round-based maps on Black Ops Cold War. Now, if you are recently playing Firebase Z after seeing this video, unfortunately, this exploit has been patched by Treyarch, the developer who made this map. But before the change had been made, players had figured out a way to skirt around the starting room door and save themselves a few points. What you would do is stand back in a specific corner of the map and run full speed and jump right at the last second. Your character model would leap across the way and mantle up onto a ledge, which would allow you to jump onto a secondary ledge where you would have access to a free teleporter that would transport you to the remainder of the play space. And I know what you're thinking, dang it, Treyarch, why did you go and patch that? Well, fear not. People have found numerous other methods to bypass the store, albeit they're not as easy, but most certainly are viable if this is something you feel like attempting in one of your matches. In our number 9 position, we have an exploit that was discovered late in the Black Ops 3 life cycle due to the fact that this particular gobblegum was not released until Zombies Chronicles. If you are unaware of what gobblegum are, they are microtransaction consumables that you can bring into your zombies matches with you. Although they were a grueling microtransaction, I personally really liked gobblegum, and I don't think Treyarch has found a way to match that system in any other game, but it's not really what we're here to talk about. To complete this exploit, you need the idolized gobblegum, and what this gum does is it makes you invisible for a certain amount of time. The zombies stand still, but you can still perform damage on them. And it's usually good to use in a pinch when you're surrounded by a horde of zombies. However, speedrunners figured out that if you bring it with you into the Nikolai boss fight on the acclaimed map Gorod Krovi, you can actually defeat him in just a few seconds. This is an amazing trick because this boss fight is incredibly hard and has 2 phases, but you can eliminate the latter phase by just having this consumable handy in your arsenal. At number 8, we have head snapping, and while this may not be a technical term, that's what I'm going to call it for the sake of this video. If you have played any COD in the last 5 years or so, you're probably aware that there are camo challenges to be unlocked, and in Treyarch games, they allow you to unlock camos in the zombies mode. The main challenge that takes the most time is generally to acquire a bunch of these headshots with all of the base weapons in the game, and this can take a really long time, and I mean a really long time. And luckily, Treyarch has created a perk called Deadshot Daiquiri, and how this perk works is that it strengthens your hip fire, and when you are playing with controller and hit the left trigger to aim, it will snap your weapon automatically onto the head of the zombie. What people have figured out is if you constantly spam the left trigger rapidly, you'll actually lock onto more individual zombies' head, thus getting more headshots and getting more kills, which allows you to get your camos unlocked more quickly. Most people see the perk as useless compared to some of the other crutch perks that have been implemented into zombies over the years, but if you use Deadshot in the way more skilled players use it, you're likely to find that it's more valuable than you realize. Coming in at number 7, we have another weapons trick, and this is really more of a trick than an exploit. It's probably something the devs thought of, but didn't think players would take it to the levels that they did. But back in the day of Black Ops 1, a big strategy would be to save your starting pistols in hopes that you would survive long enough to upgrade them in the Pack-a-Punch machine. The Pack-a-Punch machine in the zombies days of old would turn the weapon into a completely different weapon most of the time, but in the same form factor. And with pistols, this was no different. Instead of having your standard pistol that shot 9mm rounds or whatever, you would end up with a dual-wield mini grenade launcher. The problem with these weapons is they would generally down the player due to severe splash damage. So Treyarch took the liberty of creating PhD Flopper, a fan favorite perk that prevents fall and explosive damage to the player. And as I said before, I bet the devs had every intention of PhD Flopper being used in tandem with the dual-wield pistols, but gamers as usual took things to the next level. Players would end up camping in corners using this exploit to burn through high rounds. You would essentially become invincible, and since the explosives had such high damage, you'd be safe for many rounds. The only problem was you would eventually run out of ammo, but people would always create some sort of strategy to solve that problem as well. Number 6, we have infinite slide canceling in Black Ops 3. This is an exploit that fans either loved or hated. I personally loved it, and I'm gonna explain why. One of the reasons that the older COD games are so hard to go back to is because generally year after year, the movement mechanics are refined, smoothed out, and sped up. But Black Ops 3 had some of the best movement of any AAA title to date, even compared to some games of today. That being said, you would still run out of sprint quickly in zombies, and even with stamina up as a main perk in your arsenal, it still wasn't enough. And since the same exosuit movement mechanics were more or less applied in zombies, it allowed players to slide for as long as they could. This made getting around the maps a breeze, especially when you were going for high rounds and training up massive hordes to take out with your wonder weapon of choice. Coming in at number 5, we have another movement trick, and again, this is more of a tip than anything else, but this is the classic zombie juke. I've also heard this called the waggle, the wiggle, or just dipping and diving. If you're a veteran, there is one thing you know about COD zombies, and that is juking them out when you get surrounded in a tight horde. Whether you're playing on PC or console, if zombies are surrounding you and you take your aiming joystick or your mouse and maneuver quickly right and left in a fast jerking motion, yes, I just said jerking motion, what are you gonna do about it? You will most always avoid getting hit by the zombies and can usually escape away safely until you inevitably get killed or quit your game. And while this trick isn't foolproof, it ends up becoming second nature when you start to train and horde zombies. It's almost a natural movement, and sometimes I wonder if the devs put it in there intentionally, but it's more likely that players have just figured it out through trial and error. At number 4, we're jumping back to Black Ops 3, and again, specifically to Gorod Krovi. You may have been anticipating this to make it on the list, and if you have, here it is. Infinite Death Machine. That's right, Infinite Death Machine. During the Black Ops 3 lifecycle, Gobblegums, which I explained what those were earlier, were completely new to zombies. There had never been consumables before, so players were figuring out new tricks left and right, and some people had specifically figured out how to exploit the free Death Machine power-up Gobblegum. What you had to do was go to one of 3 main areas past spawn and sit on the grate where the dragon comes in to take you to Pack-a-Punch. You call that dragon into your specific location, and once you have the dragon in your parking space, for lack of a better term, you pop the Death Machine Gobblegum and keep the power-up floating in front of you. You then interact with the dragon, and while the meter is filling up to let the game know that you're about to fly this dragon across the battlefield, you quickly pick up the power-up, while holding interact, mind you, and the game will put you on the dragon. You will then land at the hatchery where you are able to Pack-a-Punch, and if you did this correctly, you'll end up holding a Death Machine with no timer attached, thus giving you permanent Death Machine and infinite high rounds, basically. Well, really just round 256, but who's counting? Coming in at number 3, we have the Victorious Tortoise and Shield Table exploit from Black Ops 4 Zombies. Victorious Tortoise was actually a pretty overpowered perk in the first place, but if you combined it with the Shield Table, it was essentially broken. What Victorious Tortoise does is it allows the player to be protected from all sides when they have their shield out, much like, well, a tortoise. The shield table is where the player goes to craft the shield, and then when the shield breaks, you go back, you buy a new shield. It's a pretty simple system, right? Well, not exactly. See, the reason this gets so tricky is because Treyarch really went crazy with the shields in Black Ops 4, and they decided to make basically all of them have offensive capabilities in perpetuity with the general defensive ones. That's a long way of saying that every shield was equipped with a gun and ammo. So every time you ran out of shield ammo or the shield broke on you, all you had to do was go back and buy more ammo and get a fresh shield. And this would only cost the player a few hundred points. And when you're on super high rounds in zombies, a few hundred points is essentially meaningless. Oh, and did I mention that the shield exploded when it was broken by enemies, damaging everything around you, providing a safe zone? Players figured out that if you stood by the shield table, shot the zombies with the shield gun, let the shield explode, and rinse and repeat, you were literally invincible and at basically no cost. It took Treyarch a few months to realize that players were doing this, so they eventually changed the cost of the shield to exponentially go up as you continually bought a new shield. Zombies fans still found ways around the change by making sure they started on later rounds and had more points when they used this exploit, but honestly, it was never really the same after Treyarch changed it. And at number 2, we have the Specialist Respawn glitch from BO4. This was a pretty simple exploit if you knew how to use it right, and I'm assuming that most players did not, because Treyarch never changed it to this day. But in the early rounds of Black Ops 4 Zombies, if you activated your Specialist while surrounded by a horde, the Specialist would release a charge and kill everything around you. This was intended as a failsafe mechanic by Treyarch to make sure that you're super overpowered when you use your Specialist weapon. That being said, the zombies would obviously die around you, but then they would respawn. This would essentially give the player more points than intended per round and could really be utilized in a way that could be seen as an exploit. And finally, coming in at our number 1 position, we have the fan favorite trick from Black Ops 3, dashboarding. If you are new to zombies and started playing during Cold War, man, you are lucky you did not have to deal with this nonsense. As we have alluded to throughout the video, Gobblegums were a huge part of Black Ops 3's life cycle and really made the game fun, but they made Activision and Treyarch even more money. The way fans got got around this microtransaction money-grubbing scheme was to dashboard their way out of their game so that they could not have to give these companies a penny more than they deserve. See, you could earn Gobblegum for free by playing the game and earning the stuff called Liquid Divinium, and then you could use your Liquid Divinium in a slot machine and get your consumable, aka Gobblegum. And some of these consumables were really rare, like the highly sought after Perkaholic Gobblegum. And so the zombies community realized something. When you were playing Black Ops 3 and the game crashed or disconnected, you would end up keeping all of your stats, XP, and most importantly, your paid consumables. So then players thought, well, what if we force our games to fail at the end? And so they did. Thus, dashboarding was born. The zombie community figured out that you could close the application or disconnect your internet and keep everything. The reason this was allowed was because it was actually a fail-safe feature designed by Treyarch and Activision to allow players to keep their XP and their stats in case there was an internet outage or something. But as usual, the gaming community used this to their benefit to not have to pay for microtransactions. And I say good on them. Unfortunately, when BO4 came around, Treyarch and Activision wised up and they set up the system so that players could no longer dashboard and all consumables would be used even if you lost connection unintentionally. So what was your favorite exploit to use from this list? Are there any exploits, glitches, or tricks that I didn't put on the list? Make sure to leave a comment telling me your favorites or anything else you would like to see in another video. Also, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. My name is Skeptics, and I will see you guys in another video. Have a good one.